Sisters, welcome to session number 9 of the Catholic Charismatic Renewal Prayer Group Leadership Development Program. The title of this session is Developing Leadership, Core Groups, and Service Teams. So far you should have seen the introduction and overview video and these 8 sessions. I'm not going to read them to you. You've hopefully been through them before. And now we're on session 9. This is the overall Prayer Group Leadership Development Program. Again, session 9, Developing Leadership, Core Groups, and Service Teams. I changed the title a little bit because I'm covering more than the original material did. Here's the agenda that we've been using all along. Do some prayer and praise and worship. Then you'll share some progress on the previous session's objectives and action plans you put together. Then you'll hear a presentation and a teaching of today's topic. Then you'll have small group discussion and with some questions from today's topic, and then closing prayer. So let's do the next step, which is in red. You can see share progress on the previous session's objectives. What you're going to do is look at your, evaluate your action plans, take about 10, 20 minutes, 30 max. What did we agree to do during those discussions from the last session? What did we try to do? And how did it work out? And what else do we need to do to achieve those goals, objectives, and those tasks? And for your convenience, I put those questions at the top of the page so you can see them and discuss what plans you put together to address them. So now you can pause the video here, have your discussion, and when you're complete with your discussion, start the video back up for the presentation. Thank you. Now let's begin the talk on developing leadership, core groups, and service teams. Okay, so let's talk about the concept of team leadership. True pastoral leadership is modeled by Jesus in the washing of the feet of the apostles. That's in John chapter 13. With the instruction to follow his example. And leadership can be defined as service, which seeks to meet the needs of a group or people in their present situation. Authentic leadership is service-oriented, especially servant leadership, which is what we're talking about. It aims to serve, not to be served. It involves a servant spirit, which seeks to serve in true humility. Leaders must be in union with and have a good rapport with those that they serve to be effective. And leaders must be dynamic and change with the needs of the group as new people come and others move through the group. And dynamic means to be changed, not so much dynamic like loud and boisterous, but it means willing to change as the needs change. Many of you, if you've been involved with prayer groups for many years, know that sometimes groups go through ebbs and flows and they grow, sometimes periods of good growth and other times periods where people leave and the group gets down to the minimum people again. So the leadership must be dynamic and change with what the needs are as the needs change. And the role of the individual leader is that of coordinating the gifts of the others. As we know, no one has all the gifts. Every person has gifts for the common good. So the leader and the leaders are, their purpose is to coordinate the gifts of the others. So let's talk about organizing the prayer group. There needs to be a degree of organization to ensure effectiveness and order. Structure for the sake of structure can be an obstacle, like maybe there's too many structures, but a complete lack of structure can be an obstacle for a healthy functioning prayer group. A prayer community should organize its structure according to its needs and to allow for order and for future growth. And we'll talk about what those needs and how they change. The structure will be different based on the size of the group. If the group is over 100 people, like years past, some groups are 100, 200, 300, 500 people. That's not as common nowadays. But if the group is over 100, the structure will be different than a group of 25 to 50, which is pretty much what is common and from my perspective, or groups of 5 to 10 could be small groups. And I've been in groups like that too. The following descriptions that I'm going to share with you of prayer group organization structure, they're just offered as suggestions. Each group should prayerfully discern their own needs and adapt to the best situation or the best situation for the needs that suits their needs. So let's talk about this that I briefly talked about in another presentation, the concept of the prayer group versus the prayer meeting. So if you see the big purple square in the middle, that's the prayer group, and that's the different groups of people in the group. And over to the right, you'll see it says the prayer group is made up of people who serve in various functions. And over to the left, the basic mission or purpose of a prayer group is to enable people to experience the baptism of the Spirit, to develop their charisms and use them for the service within the church. That's the basic purpose of a prayer group. And if you look at the black boxes along the bottom, those are some of the activities that we do as prayer groups to carry out that mission. We have weekly prayer meetings, regular Life in the Spirit seminars, could be what we call days of renewal, which could be almost anything, bring in outside speakers. Some people have charismatic masses or healing masses, and it could be other growth seminars or other events that you see fit. We've also done events where we teach people how to pray using the Miracle Hour prayer method. So there's many different ways a prayer group can carry out its basic mission. So now let's talk about the 4 different groups that are part of prayer groups. And if you notice, there's the prayer group with the different people in it. There's prayer group members and visitors. There's the core group. There's the service team. And then there's the leadership, the pastoral team, or sometimes called leadership team. And then sometimes there's an individual prayer group leader that's elected from one of the people on the pastoral team. If you look at this graphic, it shows on the left, people come in and people go. It happens all the time. So people are always coming and going in prayer groups. If we're carrying out our mission, they leave knowing how to yield to the Spirit in their lives and how to use their charisms to serve others. That's the goal. The goal is not to make bigger prayer groups, which some people, they falsely think that's the goal, to have large prayer groups. It isn't. It's to train people and help them yield to the Spirit so the church can carry out its mission. Some people are committed and called to serve the church in the charismatic renewal for various periods of time. That's how I feel. I feel like that's my calling, at least at this time of my life. So now let's learn about the 4 different groups that I just mentioned above. And don't be concerned about people coming and going. There are certain committed members of the group that are always there, that tend to be committed for a long period of time. And those are the people that help serve all the others that flow through the group. So let's first talk about prayer group members and visitors. Pretty simple. Prayer group members are those that attend the prayer meetings on a regular basis. Some are actively involved within the group in various ministries, while others may attend the meetings only. Visitors sometimes come for various reasons. I visited when my mother visited my church and asked me if I had a prayer group, and I didn't even know what a prayer group was 35 years ago. So some visitors come in for different reasons. Maybe some people visit in the area and they're checking prayer groups out in the area. Maybe they're just curious what a prayer group is, but those are visitors. So the prayer group members and the visitors are the ones that aren't on any of the other groups in the prayer group. The pastoral team or the leadership team. The pastoral team is a team of individuals who serves as the administration or the head of the prayer group. Sometimes they designate a person as the overall prayer group leader, and often this role is rotated. Sometimes maybe the pastoral team is 3 people or 5 people, and they'll take turns, maybe once a year, once every other year, where they'll rotate somebody being the overall prayer group leader, so that when people want to communicate with the group, there's one point of contact. Typically, a pastoral team member may commit to serve a period of time, and the group usually decides. It's 1, 2, 3 years is typical, and then they move off the team or they get recommitted to another term of service, but it's not indefinite. Sometimes it can be problematic when you have the same prayer group leader for 30 years. It may be that they're the only one who's willing to do it, but sometimes people don't want to let go. And if you don't let go, you don't allow other people to grow into that form of service. So it's generally recommended that people rotate in and out of these ministries. They discern, the pastoral team, how the group can best achieve its purpose, which is its mission within the local parish. That's one of their functions. They discern the group's needs and how to meet them, and we'll talk more about that. They plan the calendar and schedules for prayer meeting teaching, seminars, and other events. They coordinate the ministries of the group and discern and call people into service in the group in the various ministries. They also address any problem situations that do come up from time to time. They communicate with the pastor or the spiritual director if one is assigned to the group, also the diocesan Catholic Charismatic Renewal, and other groups as appropriate. Also, they also meet as often as necessary to fulfill their role. Sometimes maybe every week, maybe every month. It depends on what's going on. If you have a seminar going on, you're probably going to be meeting weekly in between the nights of the seminar to make sure things are going well. If you're between seminars and just have weekly prayer meetings, maybe you'll meet every 4 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that. That's kind of typical. But you'll have to decide that for yourselves. And the pastoral team or leadership team is usually members selected from the core group, and we'll talk more about the core group in a minute. So now let's talk about what we call the service team. It's a simple concept. The service team consists of members who are actively involved in any form of service within the prayer community. This may include facility setup, greeting ministry, music ministry, praise and worship leaders, hospitality and refreshments, pastoral team, core group, book and handout table, prayer team ministry, teaching ministry, or whatever other ministries you come up with, but anybody that serves the group. So that's really everybody in the group other than people that are the prayer group members that just attend the meetings and don't do any service, and visitors. So these members have made a commitment to the group and using their time and energy and talent to build the community by carrying out its mission. And some prayer groups have periodic meetings of their service teams, and that provides a way of them to have fellowship together and grow together, and they can pray and have prayer ministry for those who minister to others. So maybe once a quarter we would have a service team meeting in some groups that I was in, and you have some fellowship time, you get to pray for each other, but it's outside of a weekly prayer meeting setting, so it does offer an opportunity to get to know people better in a personal way. Next group, let's talk about the core group. Again, if your group is big enough, you may have one of these, but this is usually larger groups. The core group consists of members who serve the prayer group in a very committed way through their prayer and their gifts. While the service team can be described as the working hands of the group, the pastoral team as the administrative head of the group, the core team would be the heart of the community. Now, depending on the overall size of your prayer group, the service team and the core group may be the same. Larger prayer communities may have both. And in my experience, usually prayer groups are, and that I've seen, anywhere from 20 to 50. Those typically don't have both of these groups. They typically have one. Call it the service team or the core team. But the larger groups would, of 100 or more, if many of those exist, may have both separate groups. They have a little bit different purposes, but they can easily be merged together if you have a group about the size of 20 to 50. You can call it the core group or the service team. But let's go through what some of those responsibilities are. So core group member responsibilities, one is to maintain the unity in the prayer group. It's very important, actually, whether there's a lot of things going on. If you have a larger group of people, being united and carrying out the group's mission, make sure people know what the mission is. Through seeking to overcome division when division occurs. That's a really common way for the enemy to slow down evangelization, spreading a baptism of the Spirit, is to cause division. It can start out very small, but it can grow if it's not addressed. Through reconciliation, or helping people reconcile when things occur. And again, it is common. I've seen it happen in almost every group. And through maintaining an atmosphere of love. That's what it's all about. Love God, love others. Another thing they do is they pray for the prayer group. They intercede for the group, the local parish, and individual members. So it's important to think of it, if you're this committed core group member, that outside of the weekly prayer meeting, that one of your responsibilities would be to pray for the group, to intercede, pray for the parish, pray for individual members, maybe new members you're praying for, or discernment, or praying for them to have issues resolved in their lives. And also you're praying for discernment and input on new pastoral team members. So when the leadership team has some turnover, or people leave or move, or their time's up, the core group would also pray and give input on new pastoral team members based on their gifts and qualifications that I'll cover in another slide. Another thing the core group does is they foster the gifts of other members, and they do that by getting to know them personally and helping them to discern and yield to the gifts of the Spirit. So a core group member may be attached to a new member who's starting to use the gifts and starting to recognize it. Maybe they just spend a little bit of time talking to them. Doesn't have to be complicated. Doesn't excuse me. It doesn't take hours and days. It could be literally minutes, and then with some follow-up. They also excuse me. They also help them grow and mature in their gifts by talking to them about how they use their gifts and that sort of thing. They also support the pastoral team with their discernment, suggestions, and input based on things that are going on in the group. And they also, excuse me, they also support the pastoral team with their gifts and their efforts as requested by the pastoral team. They also support the prayer group members in their effort to live the gospel in any way possible. So again, the core team members are considered like the heart of the group. Let's talk about core team member qualifications. The following qualifications may be helpful in discerning possible core team members. They are committed members of the prayer group for several months. Some say 6 months is a good target. So these are not people that just came in off the street. You asked to be on the core group. You be people that are committed members. They regularly attend weekly prayer meetings. They must be able and willing to make the commitment to the core group. And this is very important. When you're being asked to do something, it's important that you understand what the commitment is. So this is what the commitment would be if you're asked to be on the core group, that you're committed to the responsibilities of the group that we're going over. You attend core group meetings when they occur, whether they're monthly or bi-monthly or whatever. You're committed to each other and praying for each other. You give priority to their commitments as core team members. They must be using their charisms and experiencing the baptism of the Spirit. Obviously, you want people to be the core group or the heart of the group, to be people that are using the charisms and the gifts of the Spirit in their lives. They have a solid understanding of basic Catholic doctrine. I mean, we are Catholic charismatic prayer groups, and it's important that we stay solid in our Catholic faith. Be in good standing with the local parish. Be submitted to the authority of the pastor. We should always be submitted to the authority of the pastor. And strive for right order in their lives and their relationships. So again, these are just some of the guidelines. And also, they should be willing to seek to grow spiritually. We all need to be willing to grow spiritually our entire lives. It never ends. And also demonstrate a servant spirit. So here's some of the ways to select core group members. And these are various methods. One could be the discernment of the pastoral team and the core group. They may talk or meet and say, okay, who do we think we should invite to be a member of the core group? That's what happens. They don't just show up. You don't just fill out a piece of paper. They're invited to be part of it. It could be just a core group discernment, depending, again, how big your group is and how you go about it. You may ask members of the prayer group if they feel called to be on the core group. You can discern and call members to be part of the core group. That's very important. I think that's the most important one, is we should always ask people to serve us. I remember they did a good job of that when I was brand new in the Catholic Charismatic Renewal in the prayer group I was in. They asked me right away to do different things, and they kept stretching me each time. And finally, they asked me to give a teaching, and I thought they were crazy because I was a very introverted person back then. But God took that away, and he gave me the desire to do it, and he gave me the gifts to do it. Next, also give the person time to pray about making the commitment to be part of the core group. Make sure they understand what the commitment is and say, don't give me your answer now, pray about it, and then come back and let us know. That's very important, because you really want people to be committed, not just to say, oh, they invited me to be part of the core group. That's such a nice thing. I think I want to be called a core group member. You don't want somebody to be on the core group as some level of status. You want them to be on the group because they're committed to the responsibilities. So now let's talk about various kinds of prayer group service ministries. Excuse me. Each service team ministry may have a coordinator that's responsible for getting help, but not doing it all themselves. And I'll give you some examples of that. So just because somebody's asked to do a ministry, you need to let them know it's not your job to do it yourself. It's your role is to get other people to help, and you're helping them by calling them to service. So by asking others to serve, you're also drawing them into the prayer community and family with a sense of belonging and being needed. Well, again, I can tell you when I first was in the renewal, they did a good job of it. The pastoral team would meet, and I remember them coming to me and asking me to do some of these things that I'm going to mention here in the different ministries, and it made me feel like I belonged rather than not asking me, coming, sitting at a prayer meeting, wondering what's going on, and then just leaving because I didn't feel like I belonged or was wanted. And by asking people to participate and become involved in ministries, you're also making them feel wanted. So here's one, greeting ministry. They focus on welcoming people when they walk in the door, especially new people. Welcoming people with the love of Jesus can be life-changing. And I put that in there from my own personal experience because greeting ministry can be very, very evangelistic. It's important, first of all, whoever's greeting, and the coordinator may have 3, 4, 5 people as part of the greeting ministry, and then you take turns doing it. But I remember when I first went to a prayer meeting, I didn't know what it was. My mother was visiting and wanted me to go to a meeting with her. And what I do remember, the first thing was being welcomed when I walk in the door by the greeter. I still remember the lady's face. I felt very welcomed. I felt loved. They made me feel like I belonged there, like even I was part of family, even though I didn't even know them. It was just a very welcoming, loving greeting. And I emphasize that because what I've seen sometimes in prayer groups, some of the pitfalls they can get into is people are in greeting ministry and they miss each other, so they chit chat with each other at the prayer meeting and they don't even see that new people walked in the door. That's the same for when you have seminars and all that. So I would always tell the people in the greeting ministry, make sure you resist chit-chatting with each other and be focused on who walks in the door, especially newcomers, and make sure they all feel welcomed and loved with the love of Jesus. Facilities ministry. This seems simple, but somebody needs to do it. You set up and put away the chairs, tables, etc. for the meeting. It's a ministry. You may ask people to do it for a period of time. Hey, would you like to be the coordinator or leader of the facilities ministry? It doesn't mean you have to do it every week, but what you do need to do is call others and ask others to do it. And what we would also do, I would also have a sheet which types out the specific responsibilities. So when we ask people to do a ministry like the facilities ministry, we'd say, well, here's exactly what you need to do. So they would have that information. Next ministry is hospitality ministry. That's when you have simple refreshments for after the meeting. And it's not the refreshments that are important. It's providing a time for fellowship outside of the prayer meeting where relationships develop and a sense of family occurs. So again, that's why I say hospitality is very evangelistic. Again, it doesn't matter. Cookies, somebody makes a cake, don't make it complicated. Go to the store and buy a box of cookies and then have maybe coffee or lemonade to drink. That's it. It's that simple, but it just gives us an opportunity to say, hey, after the meeting, we have some refreshments, and then everybody leaves the meeting's over, and then we start talking about each other's family, getting to know each other. And that's how I got to know people and stayed friends with people literally for decades, was because we got to know each other. If you just go to a prayer meeting and run out the door when it's over, which I have seen in prayer groups, you don't get to know each other personally. Resource table ministry. It could be called book ministry, whatever, but there's more things than just books. So I call it a resource table ministry. That's where you have a table set up for either books to borrow. Maybe people donate books to be in your prayer group library on the gifts and that sort of thing. Maybe you have copies of articles or flyers on events for members that can go to so they can grow. So what you need to do in this ministry is set up the table and then put the materials away. So we typically had a box or two that was in a closet, and whoever ran that ministry got a table out, put them on the table, and at the end of the meeting, they were there to offer people either the freebies, could be the handouts, or they could sign out a book on a sign-out sheet. Communications ministry, again, simple little thing, but somebody needs to do it. A lot of people sometimes don't come. Sometimes you come for a prayer meeting for a while. And so if you have a list of people and their telephone numbers and their emails, sometimes if you go and call a person and say, hey, we miss you. I haven't seen you in a month. That's very important. It makes them feel, again, welcome, part of the family, like they're wanted, and they may come back. Or send email reminders to people because our lives can get so busy. Maybe you send one out 2 days before the prayer meeting, reminding them, hey, we're having a prayer meeting, and here's what the topic is going to be of the teaching today. But that's communications ministry, another example. And again, you can tweak all these ministries to however they meet your needs, and these aren't the only ministries. You create your own. These are just some examples. The prayer team ministry. These are people who are discerned to pray over others for specific needs after the prayer meeting is over, and usually in a private location or room. Now, typically you have people, and if I'm a prayer group leader, I have a list of people that are on my prayer team ministry. And the reason being is you want them to have training. You want them to have education. It could be from books, it could be from videos, but also from experience of being on prayer teams with others. So not everyone is on a prayer team ministry, and not everyone should be on a prayer team ministry. But those that are, you have a list, and that is a specific ministry, and a very powerful one. Teaching ministry. This is people who have been discerned with the gift of teaching to provide teachings at prayer meetings. So again, typically I'd have a list of people who I knew were the good teachers, people that could give teachings at prayer meetings or at Life in the Spirit seminars. But also at times a person may be called to give a teaching for the first time to test the gifts in them. And they did that with me at a prayer group. Again, I think I shared this. I remember the first time they asked me to give a talk, I was very nervous about it, but I said, okay, God tells us to use our gifts. I'm willing to give it a shot. And they said, look, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's okay. But we think, you can give a teaching and we think you'll be good at it. And I did it. And once I did it, I got over the fear, and God took away the fear and gave me the desire to do it. Music ministry. This provides the music, whether it's via guitar or other instruments. And then nowadays, when we don't have people with those talents and abilities, we can use electronic means. I've used boom boxes with CDs, and nowadays even use speakers with Bluetooth connectivity to my iPhone, and I'll play songs from the iPhone right to the speaker in a prayer meeting. Of course, we have the words so people can use them. But music ministry doesn't have to be a cappella if you don't have someone who knows how to play a guitar. There's a lot of wonderful, beautiful music that's available online. Praise and worship leaders is another ministry, and this people should be discerned who have the gift of leading worship at the prayer meetings. It's a gift to draw out the gifts, to draw out praise and worship. And if you remember the earlier talks in the series, the 4 stages of praise and worship was joy, thanksgiving, praise, and worship. That people should be discerned and be trained in how to be a praise and worship leader at a prayer meeting. But again, I would have a list of people who were the praise and worship leaders at the prayer meeting, and then we would rotate people through that ministry at the weekly prayer meeting. And then pastoral leadership is another service ministry. Servant leaders who help the community see the Lord's vision for the group and to carry out their mission. The mission is the purpose for the group. So the next thing I want to talk about is, from a practical perspective, what is a typical pastoral team meeting agenda? These are some of the items that a typical pastoral team will talk about. And the reason I add this practical slide is because a lot of people really may not be from management, or I ran chemical plants and an oil refinery, so I had a lot of management experience. So knowing how to run a meeting, and this is just an example of, you could use this as a checklist. You may not discuss every one of these items, but this is just a practical list of things I think you should be talking about as a pastoral team. I was on a pastoral team. I've been prayer group leader in several places and been on the diocesan leader. So I have a lot of experience with this. So here's some examples. First, you want to have, of course, start with praise and prayer and praise and worship at your pastoral team meeting. And again, your pastoral team meeting, depending on the size of your group, could be 3, 4, 5 people, typical. If it's a larger group, maybe it's 6 or 7. You want to intercede for the group and its members. That could be incorporate it into your prayer time. One of the things you want to do, in my opinion, is you want to review your vision and your mission statements every time so you stay focused. And are we carrying out our mission? Now, some of you, when I say this, you realize we don't even have a mission statement, because I have found that is very, very common in the Catholic Charismatic Renewal. It's so common, I'm going to make a separate video just on that topic and give you examples of mission statements. But if you don't know what your purpose is, it's hard to really succeed and carry it out. So you need to know what it is. So the pastoral team should be reviewing it, even if you just briefly read it, to stay focused and make sure this is why we're here. You should review your calendar of events, your weekly prayer meetings. Maybe there's some conflict with some holidays. You just want to work through that, but you look at the calendar, look forward, however, 2, 3, 4 months, maybe 6 months if you're doing a Life in the Spirit seminar. You definitely want to plan those, usually at least get the dates out, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance, because it takes about 2 to 3 months of putting a team together and preparing to be ready for it. You could have other events you want to put on your calendar, like masses or charismatic masses. We've done growth seminars, put that on the calendar, or maybe diocesan events. So you want to discuss your calendars and what future events are coming. And again, just look at a calendar and discuss that as a team. The next things you want to talk about are your prayer meetings, which is one of your major outreaches as a prayer community. You want to review the themes of the prophecies and the words that are happening at the prayer meetings and discern any future direction from them. Because a lot of times the Lord will speak to us through that, and maybe by reviewing the words and the prophecies, you'll say, maybe we need more teachings on forgiveness or reconciliation. Or I remember one time what came out was that many people in the group didn't even believe that evil existed. We had to give some teachings on that. It was surprising to me when we did a little survey and found out more than half the people weren't sure if evil even existed. So we gave teachings on that, what the church teachings were. They will talk about the pastoral team about prayer meetings, who will serve in various roles, like on a calendar, who will be the worship leaders, the music ministry leader. Sometimes those are the same people. Sometimes that's rotated. Who's going to do the teachings? Have a schedule. What are the teachings? Maybe instead of a teaching, there's personal testimony. So who are you going to invite? So that's why it's important to plan ahead and set a calendar. I've seen some prayer groups that don't do that. You show up at the prayer meeting. Hey, is there a teaching today? I don't know. I'm not sure. No one really knows, or no, we don't. And my point here is that working as a pastoral team member of a prayer group, it does take a lot of work. There's no apologies for that. It takes a lot of work, but we're doing the Lord's work. This is the administrative part that I discussed before. Remember, the pastoral team is like the head of the group as servant leaders, but the head meaning the administrative part. They do the organization, which is what we're talking about. So next thing you would talk about or have in the agenda is future Life in the Spirit seminars or other events. And if this was my agenda, I'd say, okay, let's talk, when's the next seminar? Well, let's have it coincide with the Easter season. So let's look at the calendar, set the dates. Maybe there's other events. Maybe we want to have a special speaker come in. So we'll pick a date for that. We'll coordinate getting the speaker, that sort of thing. And also we need to talk about how do we communicate the events? Do we put it in the bulletins? Do we do something else? Okay. So this is one of the agenda items for the pastoral team meeting. The next one will be, let's talk about the service team and the core group. And let's do some of these things. Let's review the various ministries that we talked about. How are they working? Are they all working great? Or does something need to improve? What's going well and what can improve? And typically what happens sometimes is someone will say, okay, I've been doing this ministry for 9 months. I'd like to get off the facilities ministry and do something else. We say, fine. So then the pastoral team would talk about who could we ask to be the facility coordinator. Next question maybe on this would be, are there any gaps or needs that we need to fill? Like I just mentioned, maybe there's some ministries like, hey, we haven't had a book ministry or a resource ministry for a month now. We really need to look at how can we get somebody to fill that. The next is how can we call people to grow and serve by joining and committing to any of these groups? So again, when we ask people to join or to serve in any of those service team ministries I mentioned, we're inviting them to be part of the group. They then feel like they belong. They then grow and use their gifts. Next is training. What training opportunities are for members to grow? Remember in earlier presentations we talked about it's our responsibility to grow. So pastoral team members, we'd sit here as a pastoral team, maybe 5 people, and say, what can we do for our service team or core group so that they can learn and grow? And maybe we would have a service team meeting with some special topics on it. Maybe that's service team meeting maybe once every 2 or 3 months. The next is use the prayer group leadership development program. So maybe one of the things you discuss as a pastoral team, let's take our service team and core groups through this series that we just went through ourselves. Next item on the agenda may be, let's talk about prayer meeting fellowship events. This could be potluck dinners, family gatherings, pool parties. It doesn't matter. You be creative, but you developed a sense of family. I know a lot of groups never do this, but I know the groups I was involved with did do it. And boy, it really developed that sense of family and community and togetherness, and to get to know people in a much deeper way as you get to know more about them than just going to a prayer meeting, praising and worshiping God, which is wonderful, but then when people then run out the door, you don't get to know each other. So these fellowship events, I call them, are very important to me to drawing a good, solid prayer group and core of people that want to stay and minister to the church that way. Another thing you would talk about on in your agenda would be, hey, are there any diocesan events? Are there any days of renewal? Are there when is the next conference? And discuss that. Make sure you're all up to speed on that. I left off the list parish events. Are there parish events that we want to participate in? Maybe there's days of ministry, that sort of thing. And then talk about the pastoral team itself. How is it working? What are your terms of service? Sometimes people would say it would have you commit to being on the pastoral team for 2 years and then discerning others to join. There's different ways to do that. But, if the pastoral team, your target is 5 people and you're down to 4, you need to start talking about, hey, who can we ask to be on it from the core group or the service team? And then have a closing prayer. And again, this is just some examples, some ideas of things you can have on an agenda. You're welcome to copy this agenda, add to it, take away from it. But these are the typical things that you would do. So when you look at this list as leaders, you can see there's an awful lot to do. And I know a lot of groups, they value the charism of leadership, the charism of administration, because it's very important to make things happen. So now let's say a prayer together. Lord Jesus, we know that you have gifted us and our community with natural abilities, but we need the power of the Spirit in our lives in a deeper way to carry out your mission for us. Jesus, help us to be open to the gifts of your Spirit and to help each other yield to these gifts through love of one another. Help us to be a prayer family and community that evangelizes and tells others about your incredible love for each and every one of us. Help us to organize, to help others yield to the gifts of the Spirit in their lives so the Catholic Church can carry out its mission in the power of the Holy Spirit. Please raise up servant leaders, teachers, prayer team members, service team members to carry out your mission for our community. We love you and thank you, Lord Jesus, for the privilege and honor of serving you. Amen. Now let's have time for discussion groups. Let's begin to evaluate your group in the light of this teaching that just occurred. So a reminder, you should have a facilitator for the group discussion. Start with a brief prayer, read the questions, let everyone share, but stay on topic. Agree on objectives. And participants, share your honest thoughts and love. Let everyone else speak, and then stay on topic. It's important. You can help each other stay on topic. Sometimes we can get off on tangents. So here are the discussion questions for today's discussion. Number 1, how well are we organized? Is our structure adequate? What are its strengths and its weaknesses? As leaders, are we doing an adequate job of calling others into service and to grow in their gifts through service? And then 3, agree on 3 objectives or tasks that your group can work on to enhance the authentic use of the gifts in your group. Example, establishing a pastoral team. Maybe you don't have one. Establish a service team or establish a core group, or work at inviting people to join them, or establish certain ministries. I gave you a list of ministries. All those things are possibilities for you. You should all now pause the video here and then have the discussion. And when you're done with your discussions, restart the video. Okay, for this prayer group leadership program to be effective, please be committed to the following, as we've talked about before. Attend and watch all the sessions and be open to new insights and ideas. Don't be stuck in your ways. We can all be that way sometimes. Sharing openly in the discussions, and then follow through and carry out the ideas to strengthen your group, to strengthen your parish, to strengthen the charismatic renewal, and to strengthen the Catholic Church. So this is the end of session number 9. If you haven't seen this video, hopefully by now you've seen it many times. It's called Fire Up Your Prayer Groups with a Challenging Vision for Catholic Charismatic Prayer Groups. And here is the vision statement. A vibrant Catholic charismatic prayer community served by trained, anointed, and committed leaders will evangelize, empower, and I would add, and help others yield to the baptism of the Spirit in their lives. And also, don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel, because when you do, you'll get a notification when a new video has popped up. So if you want some more information, you can contact me at joe.baroden@gmail.com. And I have electronic copies of all these articles and other things. So just ask for help. I'll be glad to provide it. Here's some article names that I've already provided that you can ask for, and some groups have already asked for these. And you can contact me and I'll send you electronic copies, and feel free to make copies and distribute them as you please. So now, thank you for being here. Go set the world on fire with the love of Jesus and in the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen, and God bless you.